In today's hectic and disorderly society, we sometimes forget that true freedom is independent of the outside world. However, our own ideas are the source of it. How can we be free even in circumstances where freedom seems impossible? Is an intriguing subject. The idea of a mental prison and how we could break free from it are discussed in the story that follows. Through a variety of angles, from a prisoner's existence to the lives of those in normal society who could be unaware that they are imprisoned mentally, we will discover that the secret to achieving inner freedom may lie in practicing mindfulness and meditation. We welcome you to travel with us to find the true source of true freedom, even in situations where physical limitations exist. When discussing meditation or mindfulness, many envision serene locations like resorts, temples, or even the Buddha rooms in their homes, but not many individuals consider going to prison. That being said, prison is a perfect setting for religious practice due to the extreme misery that the locals endured. Starting with one jail in India, there are currently numerous prisons that provide training programs in meditation, mindfulness, and vipassana, in the direction of Master Goenka. Serious offenses represent the majority of the convicts' convictions. That takes a 10-day vipassana course that is scheduled for 10 consecutive days at a time, with 10 hours of practice per day from 4 a.m. to 9 p.m. 10 hours a day of inactivity is equivalent to rest for prisoners. Because they have more freedom to follow their desires, prisoners respond to meditation better than the general population. It is best to meditate since it facilitates the practitioner's ability to notice the bodily and mental feelings that arise. Something emerges and then vanishes. Most prisoners have harbored animosity since they were young. Alternatively, they might be upset at unfair treatment. Not guilty of anything, some people end up in prison. Then the miseries of prison had to be faced by him to increase rage. They can learn to observe their anger come and go by practicing meditation. Data collected statistically from a jail that houses inmates convicted of major offenses. Prior to the organization of Vipassana instruction, just 20% of freed inmates did not re-enter the jail system. However, it was discovered that just 30% of those who were remanded to prison had decreased after Vipassana training sessions were regularly held. The others were allowed to go back and begin living freely. In the US, research indicates that the application of Vipassana in prisoner training improves their capacity to control their rage. One of the inmates stated, "In the past, I used to either express or contain my anger. However, after practicing Vipassana, there was a third choice," he discovered. It is observing fury without suppressing it. Using this technique can help reduce anger. Hatred and grievances lessen. Consequently, there are fewer arguments between the guards and the inmates. Even though a prison is a building composed of bricks and plaster, many people are actually still imprisoned in their minds. This is even more terrifying than a jail cell, since a lot of individuals are unaware that they are imprisoned by their emotions. It doesn't matter who it happens to. This mental prison just makes additional pain. Even outside of jail, the mind, however, might be melancholy, not being able to avoid pain. Anger, hatred, resentment, pain, sadness, and guilt are some of the feelings that can be found in these mental prisons. This prevents people from being able to look forward or be joyful like other people. It's rooted in the past. A decade ago, several folks had their money stolen. Still, I find myself thinking about this and still can't seem to get over my anger, even though everything in life right now is sufficient. However, his pleasure was stolen by his rage. Beyond this, mental prisons can also be created by defilements like desire and greed. Individuals who are materially greedy or hooked to wealth, similar to being incarcerated. Simply consider discovering gold and making money. My emotions were mixed when the money vanished. It is difficult for people to be content with goods because of mental prisons called want and attachment, disturbed mind, clinging to material success, celebrity, appearance, or even concepts. It also resurfaces to grab hold of us when we clutch to anything. Ideologies and thoughts have the power to enclose our hearts, restrict one's thoughts, loathing us, viewing anyone with a different viewpoint as an enemy, and being closed up to ideas that could enlighten us. In order for you to be free, we must first recognize these mental prisons. In contrast, some persons have limited bodily freedom. The mind, however, is unrestrained. One such instance was an English nun who lived for a dozen years in a mountain cave in India, where she practiced meditation and seldom saw anybody else, even in an atmosphere similar to a prison. However, she was ecstatic, rising at 3 in the morning to meditate until 11 at night, at which point she went to bed. She said that she was never bored. Only happiness and tranquility exist. Not only that, but our own bodies can turn becoming prisons. This is particularly true for some disorders, such locked-in syndrome, when the patient's body is immobile and their speech is impaired, yet their brain is still functioning correctly. Some people, though, are nonetheless able to maintain their mental freedom in this circumstance. One such instance involves a French writer who suffered an accident and became paralyzed. He was able to compose a book and converse through letters by blinking his eyes, through analogy with a bulky wetsuit on the body. But the mind is like a butterfly that is free. We never know when we might need to deal with a scenario where our body turns into a prison, like being an ICU patient confined to bed, something that most people find intolerable, becoming nervous and restless. However, if we practice mindfulness, Dharma, and meditation, we can open our minds and become free. There are cordage-like ties even if the body is immobile in bed. However, because the heart is free, it is not in pain. Being released from a mental prison is true freedom. Everyone wants to be free. However, we often erroneously believe that freedom is contingent upon the surrounding circumstances. However, true freedom originates in our own minds. Through Dhamma practice and meditation, people can achieve inner freedom even in seemingly inflexible locations like jails, as this narrative illustrates. Vipassana and Dhamma practice training are offered to inmates in numerous prisons across the globe. The outcomes are extraordinary. Training makes inmates more adept at managing their rage and other unpleasant feelings. Incarceration rates have dramatically dropped. It demonstrates how mindfulness and meditation techniques may improve a person's life, even in trying situations. Prison is not, however, restricted to actual locations. Actually, a lot of people are unwittingly imprisoned in mental prisons. Anger, hatred, resentment, pain, misery, or guilt are some examples of this mental prison. That keeps us from being content or progressing. A mental prison that keeps us from achieving true happiness is also caused by lust, greed, and attachment to things or ideas. Conversely, there exist individuals whose physical liberty is limited. The mind, however, is unrestricted, much like a nun who spends a lot of time alone in a cave, or those who are mentally happy but physically incapable of moving. It is evident from this that genuine freedom is independent of the outside world, but the source of it is learning to have a free mind. It's a crucial talent that we should all practice. breaking free from mental prison. Because we may never be sure when we will find ourselves in a circumstance where our bodies are limited, like having an accident or becoming extremely ill. If we are aware, have the Dhamma as our refuge, and are proficient in meditation, we shall be able to keep our mental independence, even when there is no freedom for the body. To sum up, true freedom originates in the mind. Finding actual freedom can be facilitated by engaging in mindfulness, Dhamma, and attachment-letting practices, regardless of the circumstances, even in the face of physical constraints or restrictions.